Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Cozy Club. I'm Cozy Gamer, and I'm glad you're here. Today, we're going to go through, finally, the complete tier list with all of the characters in Disney Sorcerer's Arena. I wanted to bring you a tier list that does focus a lot on the in-game, but it does throw into account different game modes, viability, abilities that the characters have, and some mid-game usage. Now, we're not going to go through every single character on this list, as I want to keep this shorter than a theatrical film. However, we are going to touch on a good amount of the characters and look at which one's worth your time farming both early, mid, and late game. If you are looking for some in-depth on characters, I'm going to be doing that pretty soon, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you want to get notified when I start doing those videos. Alright, let's start with the ugly ducklings, the weaklings, the people that really need a buff in this game, and that's the F tier. Now, I don't know if some of these characters are going to even get a buff, as they're not highly loved characters. However, there are some fan favorites in here like Krunk and Yzma. You're going to find a little bit of early game usage out of them, but mainly I recommend staying away from these characters. Now, you only have so many resources, and I would save those resources for C tier and up. And even in C tier, I would be careful who you put those precious resources towards. Now, Baloo and Pete might be decent tanks and healers early on. However, you're going to have to unlock someone like Baloo in the Club Shard Shop, which you're just not going to want to use those tokens on him rather than some other characters or gear. While Pocahontas, she does have a pretty good lead when you start to read into it. However, you're going to have to take her up to tier 4, and by then that lead starts to fizzle out compared to some of the others. It's not that it's not a good lead, but compared to Shan Yu, Elastigirl, and some of the others, even Ariel, I would rather use them than Pocahontas. And I know you're seeing Captain Hook on there, and you could make a case for him going up a tier or 2 because of the Tower 3 and 5 needing Oceanic characters. The more they add Oceanic characters, the less viable Captain Hook is going to be. The most I've used him thus far is throwing him in there. He takes some hits in Tower 3, dies, and I throw in some more Oceanic characters. Alright, now on to C tier. Now here, you're going to get a little bit more viability, and with the right team, some of these guys can kind of shine. We'll start with the fear mechanic. You're going to have someone like Oogie Boogie and Randall. They both rely on the fear mechanic a lot to do a lot with their kit. Oogie Boogie does have one of the highest health stats in the game, if not the highest. However, outside of just being a bullet sponge, he doesn't do quite much aside from that. He is a mythical character, so I did bump him up a little bit because you can use him in Tower 5, but other than that, I would stay away from him. Now, I know some of you are seeing Korra on here, and Korra, I personally used for early on in the campaign and challenges. She has some good abilities that can kill a lot of people and fast. However, that just drops off very quickly as you have access to other offensive characters very soon on, and Korra just doesn't quite make the cut. Woody and Jessie, they just got buffed, and yes, with a whole Toy Story team, you can really wreak some havoc. However, by themselves, they just don't have enough to offer, even when they have the bucket of soldiers behind them. Woody just doesn't do enough, and Jessie just doesn't do enough on their own, or even for a matter on that Toy Story team. Now, I do wish you could farm with the heart and love that you have for these Pixar characters, but if you are truly focused on being competitive or even smart within this game, you're gonna want to stay away from some of these characters. Horned King is a great example of this. He's a great looking character. I love the Black Cauldron. However, by the time you use his cauldron, it takes about 3 turns to get it up and running. And then when it gets destroyed, it hurts the Horned King. At that point, he's just not worth using and doesn't offer a lot. Now, Calhoun isn't bad, but she isn't good either. You could find some synergies with some downtown heroes, but the problem is, when you want to start making a lot of teams and modes like Conquest, you're going to have to take away from some of the other teams to make Calhoun good. I'm sure there's someone out there that has made Calhoun work. However, she just doesn't do enough to go up a tier in my book. Now, as for my main man, Jangles, I'm one of the only ones that don't have him in the F tier. You can use him in what we think is an upcoming event to get Zerg, and he does have some decent abilities, and by decent, I'm using that term lightly, but he has some decent abilities that can do some crowd control and damage on the enemy, and take a lot of early hits early on in the villain's campaign. Alright, moving right along to B tier, these guys aren't horrible, and in fact, I would recommend definitely putting your resources into some of them. We're starting to see some of the beta players max out Davy Jones, and some of us global players are finally starting to unlock him. and the more and more he gets used, I think he's going to go higher up. Now, he's elite within the towers 3 and 5. He's one of the better oceanic characters you can get out there, so I recommend getting him just for that. However, his Dead Man's Chest just takes a little bit too long to get up and going. Now, Jasmine, in my opinion, she with an Aladdin crew or the right Kingdom team can definitely go up a few tiers. However, Jasmine does have some great synergy with Aladdin, who's a really good character, as well as with her Tiger Raja, she can absorb a lot of big hits. A pro tip for you, if you throw Raja out there, the AI can attack Raja instead of your main group of characters, thus getting you 3 stars in the challenge. As for Genie, he's kind of in the same boat as Jasmine. If you have him with the Shan Yu lead, you're going to see him a lot in the mid game. And honestly, Genie is one of the best supports in the game. And I think that has a lot to say about supports in general. They need a buff as well as healers. He has a great duplicate ability and can save one of your characters from dying. But when you're in the later stages of the game, you can just kind of ignore Genie and it doesn't really matter. Now, I have Sully here because I think that for how early you get him, with how much health and damage that he does, I think it's worth investing him at least into the mid 30s and 40s. He's going to be useful in that mid game and not the worst tank to have. Alright, last up on this list is the Sheriff, and the Sheriff is interesting. I don't know if you guys know this or if you've used him, but the Sheriff has the Big Belly Bully ability, and in fact, this ability is amazing. However, it's glitched. So if Glue, you're watching this, if you could fix this, the Sheriff is going to go up a few tiers, but currently this is where he needs to be as that ability isn't working properly. Alright, moving on to the big bad boys in the B+ tier. We're going to start off with your favorite fighting space astronaut, and that's Buzz Lightyear. Now Buzz does some great damage. He has a great stun that's super helpful against the AI. If you really want to focus on getting through tower efficiently, or if you want to focus on getting 3 stars on challenges or levels, really learn how to use his stun, or any character's stun for that matter. It can help you really delay the enemy and make sure you get your attacks in before they can even move. Ariel's on here because she's one of the 2 oceanic characters you should really focus on for Tower 3 and Tower 5. She's super helpful in PvE environments, and her Trident Dispel is super effective. Once you're around level 40 and you get her around tier 4, that's about enough for Ariel. Now Merlin, he's a great support to use to decrease the cooldowns within your team and use those super abilities a lot more often. However, he's found primarily in the Arena Exchange, and with Hades, Mordu, and Shan Yu trumping him in farm factor, you're definitely not going to be able to unlock him right away. But if you do have access to Merlin, he's an amazing support character and I recommend using him. Alright, now for Demana. Now what's not to love about an evil gargoyle who puts dots or damage over time all over the enemy? She can be extremely powerful in the right hands, and she does some great debuffs out in the field. Now Elastigirl's here, she does some high single target damage, and you could make the case for her being a lot higher. With all Incredibles, she is the cog that makes the engine work, and her leadership and passive is among the best and why the Incredibles work so well. However, if you were to remove all the Incredibles and put her by herself, I just don't think she offers enough to be placed higher. Now, Bo Peep and Jafar are the shining stars in the events that we just had. Bo Peep can be great in a Toy Story team. And for my man Jafar, am I the only one that wants Jafar to be in the A+ S tier category? It'd be so sick to be able to use him more often. His charm is really useful, but his other abilities and the rest of his kit just don't quite live up to par to bump him up a tier. Alright, if you haven't been focusing, focus now. We're on the A tier, and these are the characters you're really going to want to start investing in. Now, I just watched Onward on Disney+, and it was actually a really good movie, so if you haven't seen it, I recommend it, and it kind of helps understand the kit just a bit more. Ian is a great attacker, but without Barley, he doesn't quite do his full potential. And Manicore, if you don't take care of her the right way, she can completely disrupt and annoy your entire team. Manicore can have you pulling your hair out if not dealt with correctly. Alright, now for Mr. Robin Hood. Between stealing buffs, his hard-hitting trick shot, and giving critical chance to the entire team, this fox can do a lot for your team. However, I wouldn't use him on defense. Wow, I love me some Jack Jack, and trust me, I've used him a ton. If he wasn't so random, I think he could easily be A+ tier. Now, all of those abilities do a lot of damage, but if you got to choose the 2-turn stun, for example, he could be a lot more useful. Now, I have Simba on this list because I'm a global launch player myself. And for you other global launch players, I know you know how annoying Simba can be. Have you guys had where you put all you have on him and you just keep seeing 1 damage pop up over and over? Simba is a great defensive character who can do a lot. He can heal, taunt, and really disrupt the enemy team. Alright, moving on to the beautiful whipped cream of this gorgeous tier list Sunday, and that's the A+ list. Of course, you guys already know about Mickey and Aladdin and that they have a great use in a kingdom meta team, and you can get them really early on, so it's never a bad idea if you don't know what to do with your gear to invest it into them. However, Scar, I don't think he gets enough love. He is insane when paired up with the bucket of soldiers. He makes great distractions to the AI with his hyenas. He can go under stealth, he has some high hitting abilities, and overall he can be used in a variety of game modes. Put him up with Simba and Conquest, use him in Tower 4, and late into Tower 5 he can be very clutch. Altogether, I think Scar is very deserving in this spot. Now Dash was the character. I put him in S, I put him back in A+, I put him in S and then back in A+. I couldn't decide where to put him. He is, in my opinion, the best hands down offensive character in this game. Zerg is close, or right there with him. They are both neck and neck for the best offensive character. And really, with my testing with a full Incredibles team, they get really close in competing with those Kingdom teams at the end game. Now, Mr. Incredible, he almost made it up a tier as well. I think him and Mordu are among the best tanks in the game. However, I think he's just not as plug and play. I think he needs a little bit more incredible help around him. He does have a great health pool. His offensive down's incredible. He helps the magic around him. He very well might be able to be an S tier, but this feels right for him. Mulan is incredible. She's super fast. She does great damage, has great debuffs. There's no reason not to use Mulan. She was an easy A+ to put here. I also have the Big Bad Wolf on here. He's, in my opinion, he's between A and A+. I like him a whole lot. I think he does a lot. He does some incredible damage. He does die a little bit too easy, in my opinion, but he is probably the biggest free-to-play damage that you can do, and he's worth having a roster spot a long time throughout the game. That's why he made it on the A+. We're on the cherry on this Sunday, the S tier, and aren't you just completely shocked? Aren't you baffled that these 4 tunes made it? Now, I'm sure you knew that Shan Yu, Hades, Mordu, and Zerg were going to be the top of the top, and they're here for a reason. Their stats are incredible. They're really, really solid on defense. Now, I think that S and A+ characters can all be used together. I think there's not a huge amount of difference. But with these specific heroes, you're going to want at least a few of them within your team to have the best chance at winning. Now, the one downfall to all these characters is that 3 of them are all in the same shop. In Zerg, he's going to be required to get a lot of characters in order to get him. So you're going to be seeing a lot of the A+ characters find their way in the top teams. And then as people play more, these S characters will come in. Now keep in mind for Mordu and even Hades, if they're a low star in gear count, they're not going to be as good as you see them on this list. You do want to star them up a little bit. So if you have a tank that's a 6-star and Mordu at a 3-star, I would recommend using the tank at the 6-star before Mordu, just because he's higher up on this list. And that really, ladies and gentlemen, is what you want to look for. You want to look for great plug and play characters and to form this team with all the characters you're seeing here. I think there's a lot of team compositions that we can get creative with, and there's not just one team that's going to dominate Arena. In fact, most of the in-game players I'm talking to, they all use different teams and they all want to get creative and find the next best thing. Alright, so here you have it, the complete tier list from S to F tier. Now again, I think some of these characters are going to get buffed, and if your favorite character isn't quite where you want him, I'm sorry, I'm not responsible for that. I think a good strategy is to focus on B and maybe just a touch of C tier characters and put all your resources in them. Try to ignore the ones on the bottom. They are good about buffing the characters that need to get buffed, so you might see some of these guys rise in our next tier list video, but for now, this is where they are all at. I want to thank you guys so much again for coming to the Cozy Club, getting comfortable with me, hanging out. Please make sure if you like what you saw today to subscribe, like the video. It only helps me grow my channel. We've got some great things coming to this channel and I'm excited to share them with you. Thank you guys so much for coming by and we'll see you next time.